Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, guys, we're just setting up the video. Second. Can you guys see me yet?
I can't start the video.
Okay, so now you can hear me, right? You can see me? Yes? All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah, Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ala. Let me know if there's any issues with the audio or the video, and we'll take care of it from there, inshallah ta'ala. طيب, so today we want to do a brief fiqh session on the fiqh of zakah. Definitely, fiqh of zakah is a big topic, and it'll take days and days and weeks to cover the whole subject. But the intent is simple. The intent is for you to understand the foundational pieces of knowledge about zakah, so you know what to do with your money, especially in Ramadan. And the reason is because, I mean, even though basically you can do zakah any time during the year, most people try to set it within or set their year, lunar year for zakat during Ramadan, because there's multiples and multiples more, rewards. So let's start, inshallah. What is zakah? So linguistically, zakah has really two meanings. Okay, number one is the tahara and the salah, meaning basically the purification or purity. And number two, it is al-baraka wal-nama, which is something that grows and something that increases and develops, really. So development is maybe the best word for it, basically, from an English perspective, or baraka, which is blessings. So zakah, yes, cool. So these are the linguistic meanings. From a Sharia perspective, as you can see, there's a couple really meanings that we said. So number one, if we talk about the ziyada, or the addition, or the growth or the development, or the surplus, or this has to do with the money, and you can look at it basically in two ways. When you're giving zakat to the poor, you're actually growing their wealth. So I'm giving money so I can grow the money of a poorer person in society, and that helps basically in the development and the growth and the financial stability of other people in society. Okay, so that's one. Number two is the purification. So when you actually use when you do zakat, you're purifying your own wealth from maybe any sin that have combined this wealth while acquiring it. In a different way, you're also cleansing your own heart from stinginess, right? Because stinginess, being stingy, being not so generous, is one of the diseases of the heart. So when we speak about purification, we're purifying ourselves from such diseases and such akhlaq, and that's where the purification comes into the definition. The third one is you're purifying the heart of the poorer person, also from diseases in the heart, but specifically maybe not stinginess, because SubhanAllah, mostly basically the poorer person is more willing to give because they're always feeling the pinch of not having something. But they might have other diseases of the heart due to their situation, which could be. Again, there's no generalities. We're just speaking here, in case by case scenario, really. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the human nature and the human nafs best. So a poorer person might have envy. We're not saying basically rich people might not have or have it less. They might have it more. But again, these are some of the things that basically helps from a purification aspect of a poorer person. So for the one who's giving, definitely it helps in the disease of the heart that has to do with stinginess. The poorer person may be hating the others who maybe are more affluent in society, or being envy and stuff like that. Maybe the other way basically to include the second meaning of growth, which is ziyada, meaning or increase or having a surplus. So from a perspective of having more, when the money grows to a certain extent, then you basically take zakah from it. That's from the perspective of the giver. So we both definitions in the actual meaning of zakah. If the money grows enough, then you start paying zakah. The payment of the zakat to the ones who have less will grow his money. So there's growth in both ends, as you can see. In terms of purification, also there's purification to the one who's giving, and there's purification to the one who is receiving. So these are the two meanings, and as you can see, the fardiyya of zakah, which is again the third pillar of Islam. We're speaking of the third pillar of Islam. The first pillar is the shahada of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. The second pillar is the salah, and the third pillar is the zakah. Yeah, and most people basically, they interchange the siyam and the zakah. They think the siyam is the third pillar. It's actually this fourth pillar. So it's shahada, salah, zakah, siyam, and hajj. The word zakah appeared in the Quran 30 times. And as you can see, we just counted the second and the third pillar from a perspective of the order 28 times, if I'm not mistaken, or 27 times of those 30 times the word zakah was in the Quran. It came as adjacent to the word salah. Salah was zakah. Salah and zakah. Salah and zakah. 27 times. 27 out of 30 times they came together because they're twins. Another synonym of the word zakah, or a word that basically we use to also denote the giving of money to others who may be less affluent or fortunate, is the word sadaqah. Sadaqah and sadaqat. And this word sadaqah and sadaqat came in the Quran 12 times. Now most people think that sadaqah is for the voluntary charity, and zakah is for the obligatory charity. And this is not true. This is not the case. Actually, the word sadaqat and sadaqah, when it even comes in the Quran and Sunnah, in many cases, it does come as the obligatory giving of money or wealth, basically. So zakah and sadaqah are actually interchangeable from a Shari'i perspective, even though from a popular, not from a fiqh perspective or a Shari'i perspective, from a popular perspective, people use the word sadaqah more. Even maybe some fuqaha, I would even basically argue that the word sadaqah is used more for the voluntary financial giving, and the zakah is more restricted or more specific to the obligatory ones. طيب, Imam al-Mawardi, by the way, says that basically as-sadaqah and zakah, they're equal, they're synonymous, they're synonyms. They both basically are pretty close in terms of namings. Now, what does it mean? Why are we saying sadaqah? Sadaqah is you can easily basically decipher, even if you're not a native speaker of the language, that sadaqah comes from sad, dal, and qaf, which is a sidq. And Imam al-Mawardi comments and says that the reason as-sadaqah was named as such, from a derivative of truthfulness, because the giving of money to the poor in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a sign of the truthfulness of one person's belief. See how powerful this concept is? Most people basically are stingy. And even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran basically have mapped those two concepts together, which is the Iman and the real truthfulness of one's heart about his Islam and belief, and the giving of money. People who don't give are the ones who are disbelievers. Really, that's a characteristic of disbelief. Yeah, those who hate the fardiyya of zakah, those who do not like the fardiyya of zakah, those who reject the fardiyya of zakah are actually disbelievers. Yeah. So if a person basically has a similar emotion, again, then maybe your iman is impacted or your taqwa is impacted, and that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says basically the one who gives, أعطى, who gives the money, gives wealth, gives to the poor. And it came even in generic way basically to give. The act of giving is powerful. And the act of giving is an act of believers. Don't forget, again, it's not mutually exclusive. So the non-Muslim might give, but it's a characteristic of a believer to give. See what I'm saying? وَاتَّقَى, if a person basically gives and fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that person صَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى. صَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى is basically to believe in the truth of La ilaha illallah. What is the husna? Is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And as a counter example, أَمَّا مَنْ بَخِلَ وَاسْتَغْنَى وَكَذَّبَ بِالْحُسْنَى. So as you can see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the disbeliever now, and says the one who مَنْ بَخِلَ al-bukhl is stinginess. So this is the heart basically. The zakah came and the sadaqah came to purify the human heart from these evil and inhumane emotions and characteristics. وَاسْتَغْنَى, and the person basically feels he doesn't need God because he's well off without Islam. And this is what most disbelievers feel. The people who disbelieve or leave Islam, actually, they feel, well, I don't need Islam. I can take care of myself. I'm doing good. I'm doing fine. I'm doing okay in life. I don't need any guidance. I'm just mimicking the words of these people make me, subhanAllah, sick. And only arrogance can get you to that state of affairs that you think that you delude yourself that you're able to, take care of yourself. How can you take care of yourself? Do you create the oxygen that you breathe, or if the oxygen is gone, you're dead man or dead woman? Do you create your water molecules? And you have the ability to create water. Astaghfirullah. You're so fragile as a human being. You're so fragile. A little super microscopic, not even organism, just a thing. Because most people think the virus is actually an organism. It's not an organism from a lively organism. It's not. The bacteria is a living organism. The virus is not. This little microscopic nothing. Yeah. It's because from our perspective, you can't see it. It's so microscopic. This little nothing caused you to suffer and lose your life and so forth. You cannot take care of yourself. You cannot. You need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this emotion of feeling the dependency toward the creator of the universe, that idea, a proof of the truthfulness of the belief in this idea in your own heart, since we cannot see it, right, is the sadaqat. So even if yourself, some people come to me and tell me, Sheikh, how do I know if I'm a true believer? What's a sign of a believer? Well, this is a sign of a believer, a sadaqah. A sadaqah. You want to know if you're truthful? Well, go give some truth. Kind of. Go give some truth. Yeah? Meaning go give some wealth, go give some money, go give some some of your wealth to other people. طيب. So this is really the quick introduction to the word sadaqah and zakah. Most people, when they use the word sadaqah, they mean the recommended aspect, and the zakah, the wajib, or the fard aspect. But again, in the Quran, basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for example, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ. It says, indeed, the sadaqat is for the poor and those who are needy. Well, what is sadaqat here? Is it zakah? Is it voluntary? Is it voluntary, or is it the obligatory payments? It is the obligation. It's actually the zakah here. It's not the regular, optional sadaqah. This is the wajib of the money that basically gets given by the Muslim. طيب. Excuse me. When did the zakah become fard? Most of us know that the details of the ahkam of the sharia came in after the hijrah. So the Madani Quran and the Madani period is when most of the ahkam came by or came down from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's revealed text. And the Mecca period really focused on the two other aspects of Islam, which is mostly the aqidah and the tazkiyah. The aqidah and the tazkiyah. And that's how the Quran works, really. Basically, the Quran is three parts, really: aqidah, sharia, and tazkiyah. And the qasas, some scholars basically in the past they say the aqidah, sharia, and qasas, because the stories are a big portion of the Quran. But that, I would say, that's not as accurate, to be honest. I personally believe it's really aqidah, sharia, and tazkiyah, and that's the trichotomy, if that's a word, dichotomy, trichotomy, if that's a real word, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to his deen, when Jibreel alayhi salam came and asked about basically the three aspects of Islam, or the deen of Allah, which is Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. So Islam is the sharia, Iman is the aqidah, and Ihsan is the tazkiyah aspect. And that's why, reading Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam have said, when you read Qul Huwallahu Ahad, it's as if you've read 1/3 of the Quran. Why? Because 1/3 is aqidah, and Qul Huwallahu Ahad specifically, purely talks about the aqidah from A to Z in the shortest manner as a surah. As a surah. طيب. But was the zakah basically, was it established before the hijrah? Was it established in Mecca before the Madani period? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. It is. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always alluded to charity, and alluded to, or even basically spelled out the need and the obligation of giving from a financial wealth perspective. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ. وَآتُوا حَقَّهُ يَوْمَ حَصَادِهِ. And this is in Surah Al-An'am. Everybody knows Surah Al-An'am. The whole surah came together with 70,000 malaika, really bringing it down from the heavens to the lower heaven, and until Muhammad Rasulullah received it. So Surah Al-An'am is a Mecca surah. It came all at once, and this is talking about basically the zakah of the hasad, which is the zakah of the agriculture and the food supply. That being said, even though it did come in Mecca, and what many people basically don't know, when people speak about Madani and Mecca, unfortunately, and that's a problem when you have just younger speakers just speak about these subjects without knowing the full details of the matter. Actually, almost all the ahkam, in its generalities, and even Imam al-Shatibi says all the ahkam, he says, even he makes it even universal. It's like all the ahkam of the Sharia, but in its general form, came down in Mecca. For example, this ayah is talking about zakat, definitely, because it's speaking about it in an obligatory fashion. But see, what is the difference between the Mecca and the Madani? The Madani is where all the details and the conditions and the specific maqadir, which is measurements of the different aspects of the ahkam, came down. Okay, in Medina, all the details came down, not in Mecca. So that's why it was open-ended, and how did the Sahaba radiallahu anhum basically comply with such matter? Maybe is for further research, but definitely they gave out. So as long as you gave, doesn't matter what the number is, as long as you gave, because it's mutlaq. That's what we call mutlaq in Islam, which is unconstrained or unspecified obligation. So khalas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, look, give part of your crops when you at the time of harvest. Khalas, as long as the farmer basically gives a part of it, he is ma'jur, and this act is mujzi. Mujzi means basically that it fulfills the requirement of the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It fulfills the requirements of the law. So when did Zakah as we know it today, when was it revealed? Second year of Hijrah. The second year of Hijrah is basically where the ahkam of Zakah came down, basically with the details that we know today in the fiqh. Any questions until now? There's no problem with basically talking about questions right now. Anybody has any question? Can raise your hand maybe or something. You have Sister Maryam can take care of it, inshallah. We want to limit it so we can continue. So let's limit it to 1 or 2 questions only, inshallah ta'ala. Anybody wants to ask a question? Go ahead, Sister Iman, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Before I ask my question, is it only related to what has been said now? Or if it's, can it expand a bit about the same topic?
It depends, because we're going to continue moving. So just ask your question. I will see, inshallah. As long as we, within Zakah, definitely without going outside the Zakah, be okay. But definitely we're going to continue for the next hour and a half discussing stuff. So you might want to also be patient a little bit. But go ahead, say your question.
And sorry if it does go a bit the other way, but it's about I have 2 questions basically. Like Zakah, is it permissible to spend it on vaccines? Because I've read something about some, I don't know which scholars but they permitted Zakah to be spent on, in this times, the COVID vaccines. And I was a bit surprised. Is there any legitimate basis for that?
So yeah, we will discuss this inshallah maybe a little bit later. But let's maybe kind of give a quick answer now. There's 8 places where the zakah can be spent, right? But you need to understand, mostly there's 2 important types, which is the poor people, the poor and the needy. And without really going into the differences, it's more like academic, so I'd rather not basically go through it. But the poor and the needy is where the zakah should be going to, right? The cash should be going to those 2 types of people, period. Is there others basically who the other types? Yeah, there are others, but they're very restricted. We'll speak about them later.
Okay.
Now, well, I didn't finish yet, but I'm saying, is the vaccine going to the poor people, or is it just basically general vaccination for the nation?
True. Yeah. Makes sense.
Is it for the poor? Is it for the poor, or is it basically for everybody?
I couldn't read it. It was basically a report from the United Nations or the World Health Organization, and it's and they basically said that this Islamic body of that released fatwa, they said that it's permissible for the zakat to go there. And they also, I read in another report, that they urged the people to donate to the United Nations, because they can also help the Muslims. And I was a bit surprised by that. And I thought, well, I could ask you.
No. So let's put it this way. So number 1 is basically the zakah should be only given to a Muslim, not to a non-Muslim. It is haram and huge sin to give the zakah to a non-Muslim. The zakah should go from the hand of the believer to the hand of a believer, until it reaches basically the hand of a believing poor person. Okay? It's very important to understand that. So it's a huge sin, and if anybody basically makes such a fatwa, they have fallen into sin. If there is, for example, an Islamic charity organization, say Islamic Relief, whatever it is, they want to take a portion of the zakah money to help the poor get vaccinated. As long as this money is going to the poor people, يعني inshallah ta'ala, it should be fine, because it's part of the expenses for the poor people, really.
Okay.
But again, and there's ikhtilaf between the scholars. Scholars might say, no, the money has to go in cash. If it was given in cash, or if it was food, just say as food or whatever it is. And then the poor person can decide for themselves. I mean, what's if they don't want to get vaccinated? Or what's if they're already vaccinated? Let them basically make their health choices for themselves from that perspective. So the issue has ikhtilaf between the fuqaha at best, but definitely the zakah money should never basically go from a Muslim to a non-Muslim. It should only stay within a Muslim hand to a Muslim hand that is trusted, actually. Not even any Muslim. It has to go from your pocket, you trust your own pocket, definitely, to a trusted hand of a believer, that where you can have some transparency and follow through and make sure you can trace where your money is going until it reaches, inshallah, the Muslim hand.
Jazakallah khair, that really helps.
الله يبارك فيكم. الله يبارك فيكم. طيب إن شاء الله بإذن الله. Since we didn't make the rule, I didn't want Sister Iman to feel not welcome to ask the question. But please, from now on, please keep the questions to exactly what we covered before. We're going to take those basically quick 5-minute breaks to take questions, and then we'll move on. So, Brother Ashraf, do you want to ask? And then I'll take only 2 questions every single time I ask. So, Brother Ashraf, go ahead. And please keep the question within the domain that we've discussed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's actually not a question, but a humble submission that, if the questions are taken too early, then we go off into tangents, and it's like putting the cart before the horse. So I think we come to a stage where the specifics you have described, and then we go into these things. Otherwise, it will be a jungle. Anybody can ask any question, and then it will be really off the main purpose of this. So my humble submission is that it should go into to a point where you have gone into some level of details.
I think we've already basically, just before you ask a question, I've made the rules, and you know what I'm saying, like, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and reward you for your concern. But we're going to keep it as such. We're going to cover a section by section, and then give 5 minutes for questions within the topic. So you did not respect my request. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, and stay within the topic. I don't think the question you just gave or the comment you made has to do with what we covered. So please keep it there so we can reach the intended goal you're trying to help us reach, inshallah.
Exactly.
So let's move next, inshallah, to the second section. Second section is basically the obligation of zakah. Who does it basically fall upon? What makes a person now under liability to pay zakah, right? طيب, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Number 1, the person who zakah becomes obligatory upon is the following. Number 1 is Islam. And number 2, really, it is basically mulk al-nisab. Some scholars added to these conditions other things, like al-bulugh wal-aql wal-hurriyyah. Bulugh is basically reaching puberty. Number 2, al-aql, basically having sanity, because the one who does not have a sane mind is not mukallaf, is not liable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rules and law. And number 3 is basically hurriyyah, freedom, in contrast to basically the servants in Islam. So those 3 things basically, as you can see, lots of other ulama said basically they're not really a condition. As long as you're a Muslim, and as long as basically the nisab have reached its characteristic, khalas, the zakah becomes wajib on that money. طيب. Now let's discuss something very specific. We know in Islam, as I just said, that the young child who did not reach puberty is not liable from a legal perspective within the Sharia of Islam. So let's say a boy inherits money from his father, or sometimes parents actually give transfer the ownership of money and wealth to the names of their children. So they become the owner, right? So if a person is less than 12 years old and the father, for example, gave all the wealth, let's say a person has $10 million, puts it in the name of his son because he's the guardian, and the son now who's like, let's say 3 years old, is a little baby, can we say that the zakah is wajib upon this baby, right? Like, for example, similar to salah, the children under the age of puberty they're not, there's no obligation upon them to pray, for example, the 5 daily prayers, right? So we start encouraging them at 7, and we start becoming a bit more stern and strict with them at 10 until basically they reach the age of puberty, which is usually 12 plus or minus, and then becomes an obligation. So the answer to this one is that zakah is actually an obligation upon the money, the wealth, not the human being. And that's why basically when I just discussed the shurut, the conditions, we really took those conditions off. The condition is basically having money owned by a Muslim that reaches the nisab. That's really the main characteristics of who this zakah applies to, or whose money does it apply for. So if we have a little child or an insane person, both of those categories, they would still need to pay their zakah. Now, let's say it's a little baby or people, they don't have the capacity of basically managing the money. That's where the guardian, every single person who cannot take care of themselves in Islam, have a guardian. So a child or a person who's insane or so forth, they'll have an assigned guardian from their family. And if they don't have a family, the Khalifa of Islam would and the Imam, the Amir al-Mu'mineen, the Muslim leader, will assign them a guardian. Could be a judge, could be basically an assigned person from government. Yeah. So that's what you need to understand. That the zakah is on the money, not on the person. The zakah is on the money of any Muslim and not on a specific person that have reached a specific. And who does the financial work? It is the guardian. طيب. Now, so now we discussed who, as a person, basically, does the zakah become wajib upon, and we said basically as long as the person is a Muslim, and as long as the nisab of the word nisab is basically that financial metric or threshold that a specific type of wealth reaches, yeah, until it becomes basically now zakah liable. Okay, so for the money to become zakah liable, basically that threshold is called an-nisab in Arabic. Okay, and we're going to discuss what that is. طيب. What type of wealth does zakah get applied upon? Is it anything that you own? Is it every single ownership? Is it every single wealth? No, that's not correct. Okay, the most important characteristics of the wealth that gets to be under the zakah liability is the following few issues. Number one is tamam al-mulkiyya. Tamam al-mulkiyya is the complete and non-partial ownership of the asset or of the wealth. So if you have semi-ownership of something, let's say you're renting something, right? So say as I went and rent a car. Now this car, I don't really own it. I own something specific about, which is owning the benefit of it. I don't own it, right? Or let's say somebody basically took a specific amount of or let's say somebody controlled your bank account somehow. A hacker hacked your account. You don't really now control your money. Yeah, the money is still under your name from a financial perspective, but you don't have access to that money. That money doesn't become zakatable at that point. Okay, somebody basically kind of hacks into your account. You don't have access to it anymore. Whatever is in that account does not become zakatable for that period of time. Okay, and if you end up losing it after, different story. But even if we assume the money is still under your name, let's give some realistic examples. I always get asked about RRSPs and RESPs. So you put your money in these accounts, And we're going to assume that these accounts are halal, meaning they're not invested in any haram, just for the sake of the argument, right? And there is basically somehow some way where you could make it as such, but I'm not here to give financial advice. You should go and speak to your accountant. But we're going to assume that you have an RRSP account or RESP account where the money lies. Now, what you need to understand, the minute you basically put your money in an RRSP, you cannot touch it, you cannot move it, you cannot change it, you don't have access for it. It is a money that basically partially the government or the agent of the government, yeah, it could be a specific financial institution or a bank, whatever it is, they have access to your money. Okay, they will take it, they will submit it basically for investment, they will do this, they'll do that. You don't have, you have access in a specific way. Meaning, if you want the money, you need to basically submit a form, submit an application, take the money, pay the taxes on it, and then receive it for full ownership. So even though it's under your name, you're restricted in how to be able to access and use the money. This is what we call partial ownership. So it negates this first characteristic of what gets to be zakatable, right? What gets to be zakatable is that. Now, definitely, brothers and sisters, I want you to understand, if you're going to go and just put your money in an RSP account just so you don't pay zakat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the intention. But if you're putting it because, for example, your employer is giving you more money and you don't want to pay taxes now, and it's a real decision that you're making due to your financial situation, there is no problem at all. But the money in an RRSP account is not zakatable because of this condition. This condition, which is tamamul mulkiyya, the complete full ownership or the unrestricted ownership of a wealth asset, is the first requirement. As you can see, it comes in basically right there and then. It is the first requirement. Number two. And what's the dalil? What's the proof of that? The proof of that is basically always Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about your money. Your money. For example, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا. Meaning, take from their monies a sadaqah that you purify them and you basically you cleanse them and you purify them with. And also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says basically وَالَّذِينَ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ مَعْلُومٌ. So as you can see, basically here the dhamir, the pronoun is always referring to the mulkiyya, the ownership to you. So you're the owner, you're the full owner, and that's how it stays. It stays as full ownership. Anything that basically, for example, affects this full ownership becomes, or breaks this condition of zakah. Right, number two is very important. It's called an-nama. An-nama. This is what we try. This is our best, basically, kind of translation to an English economic word or term in English is liquid assets. Liquid assets. Now, to be honest, I didn't basically make sure. So, is it one-to-one mapping? So I'm just gonna keep it basically in the Arabic and say the second condition is an-nama. What is an-nama? An-nama is basically wealth that you own that either is used to basically to make more money, meaning for investment purposes, you're actually investing it, or has the capacity to be invested. You might not be investing it, but it has the capacity to be invested. Okay? An-nama, meaning it's money that basically can basically be and what gets excluded? What gets excluded from such a characteristic? What gets excluded is, for example, personal items. Let's say you buy a laptop, an expensive one, an expensive laptop for, let's say, I don't know, like $8,000. Do you need to basically pay zakat on this laptop? The real answer is depends. If you're buying this laptop to actually to sell it and make more money, then it becomes zakatable, because this wealth, which is the laptop in this case, is now used to make more money. You bought it for $6,000, you're selling it for $8,000. So as you can see, the laptop itself, this money that you have now is been set within your financial management system, let's say personal management system that you have, as an asset to make more money and to use it to grow your current assets into something more and more and more. Tell you, what's if you basically just buying a laptop just for your own use? You're not trying to resell it. You're not trying to whatever. If you're not trying to resell it just for personal use, then it does not basically conform to this condition. Personal assets that you use basically to just consume, yeah, they are not zakatable. They are not zakatable. So if you buy a laptop even for $20,000, but this is basically for personal use, that laptop or that TV or even that car, yeah, if you bought a big car, let's say, and you have two cars already, you're buying a third car, it's also for personal use. Let's say you buy 20 cars and they're all for personal use. Yeah, you just, I don't know, you're a car lover and you just want to drive this type of Corolla, this type of Corolla, and this type of Corolla. You're buying all different types of Corolla cars because you're a car maniac and you love cars. So you have 20 Corollas in your driveway. So it's totally fine. There's no problem. Even if you want to switch all these 20 Corollas to 20 Lamborghinis, it's okay, as long as they're for personal use. Okay. Now, you might say, well, basically everybody can claim that. Well, yeah, true, everybody can claim that. But that's why, subhanAllah, but you need to understand, zakat today is just it's a fard upon the ummah of Islam. That's not being done. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. The super majority of the rich people in the whole Muslim world do not pay zakat. Do not. Yeah. What is missing? What's missing is basically, for example, in Canada, there's taxes. Paying taxes is in law. So what does the government do? Well, they create a government agency to make sure that people are paying their taxes. It's called the CRA, Revenue Canada, or Canada Revenue Agency, right? So right now, is there an agency in the world that basically oversees the collection and the distribution of the zakat? Well, definitely there isn't. Definitely there isn't. There's volunteers. There's volunteering. Hello, I'm a volunteer. There's volunteering organizations, charity organizations that try to basically fill this void for the Ummah of Islam by trying to collect and distribute. But they don't have authority to go basically and check your bank account and review your finances and review your income like you basically would do. Every single year you would go and fill forms and you'll basically apply and you'll do your taxes and so forth. But you don't do that basically when you're zakah. You just like everybody trusts you. You just go. If you give them 500, khalas. What are they gonna say? Since when, brothers and sisters, you went to, for example, to some charity organization and told them, I want to pay my zakah, and they told you, okay, how much, sir? And then they're like, oh, it's like I just need to pay $50. And they're like, no, I don't think this is $50. I need to make sure when I review your account, sorry, your account was flagged, sir. We're gonna go through, all your wealth, and we're gonna have a full review of your financial assets and so on. Nobody would do that. They don't have the right to do that. Nobody can do that. Nobody can or has the right or would, with their sane mind say such a thing. So, might as well, a person could basically owe $1 million in zakat. He can go and say, well, can I give my zakat? And they put $5 in the box, right? In that red box. So there's no agency today that oversees the zakat. No, there's no one. There's no such thing right now. And that's, as you can see, basically, even the zakat is ibadah. Many people think it is a personal ibadah. It's not a personal ibadah. It's actually an ummah-wide ibadah. It's a government run ibadah. The Islamic government would basically go and look after the citizens and have a zakat revenue agency, a ZRA. We need a ZRA to basically make sure that people file their zakat and then on an annual basis. And some zakah filings would be reviewed, and there'd be some zakah files would be flagged based upon a control and audit system. But we don't have that, unfortunately. The Uthmani Khilafah was the last state we had that had such a system, and after World War I, unfortunately, the Muslimin lost the state the government system that the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam built in Yathrib 1442 years ago, subhanallah, and the leaders of that government basically were the Ottoman Turks at that moment of time in 1924, where the whole Uthmani state was dismantled, and the Khalifa of the Muslimin was exiled to Switzerland, and that's it really. Like, since it's been 100 Hijra years really that we don't have any government agency that would oversee your zakah and so forth. And even in countries like Saudi Arabia or Pakistan or maybe whatever it is, they might basically put a little bit of sloganeering, I call it, because really those government controls, nobody nobody applies them really. Nobody applies them. Nobody really is following through. People don't really care. It's not even an Islamic system in the first place. So as you can see, zakah is not a personal duty. It's a personal duty plus a government duty, both together. They come together. The Muslim, as an individual, needs to fulfill this fard upon him, but there will also basically be a government agency to oversee the collection and the distribution of zakah. So we said basically the second characteristic was an-nama. And we said basically that usually people use the word liquid assets. But again, I don't think there's a one-to-one mapping between those two words. Any money and any wealth that basically you could use to make more money is a characteristic of the zakatable money. Okay, zakatable money. What's the dalil for that? Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in a hadith narrated by Imam al-Bukhari, ليس على المسلم في فرسه ولا عبده صدقة. If a person basically owns a horse or has a permanent servant, he does not pay sadaqah. For that. Why? Because the horse is for personal use. And the service of the servant, which is a permanent employee, equivalent, is basically for business use or personal use, that service and so forth. So as you can see, basically any personal items, whether it's your car, whether it's even your house, there's no such thing as property tax in Islam. There's no such thing as property tax. Property tax will basically, if there is such a one, it will fall under the business assets, sometimes, not even all the time. Yeah. So first, it has to be from a business perspective, using it basically for investment purposes, and it might have to be direct, not like a fixed cost structure. So people ask why? Why is it basically just like why is it just this type of money? Well, it is just to Islam made zakah so you don't make people poor, right? If you paying zakah makes you poor, it's a problem. So and the usual people, when they put money for investment, they already have covered their basic needs. So the investment money, which is being utilized to create more wealth for that person who's already rich, as you can see, because he's already covered all his basic needs. Now he has extra money to invest in the economy for the sake of making profit and more money. That money we basically take a small chunk from and we distribute it back to specifically the poor and a few other categories, but specifically the poor in society. What's number 3? Number 3 is bulugh al-nisab, reaching a specific amount for the wealth, and these thresholds are different based upon the type of wealth. So not all wealth basically have the same number or the same threshold. Yeah. So for example, if you're a camel owner, basically you have to reach 5 camels. If you own 5 camels, you need to pay zakah. If you own lambs or sheep, you have to basically reach 40 sheep. So if you have 5 camels or 40 lambs, then that asset, which is in animal ownership in this case, becomes liable for zakah. In terms of gold, Gold is always measured by the dinar, the golden dinar at that time. How much does it weigh? Well, it weighs if I'm not mistaken, 4 and 2.5 grams of pure gold. What about basically the dirham? The dirham is the silver coin. It's definitely way smaller, and it's 200 dirhams. The full amount is 585 grams for the whole 200. So you can do the calculation to figure out basically how much one single dirham, which is a silver coin in Islam, basically weighs exactly. So 585 divided by 200, okay, which is 5.85 divided by 2. So you can do your math, inshallah ta'ala. It's a little bit less than 3 grams. Yeah. What's the fourth condition? The fourth condition is salamatu min ad-dayn. As-salamatu min ad-dayn is basically being free of debt. You must be free of debt. A person who's in debt, shouldn't be maybe. He's actually one of those 8 types that you could give zakat to. So you can't be giving zakat. That just doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction. So you have to be free of debt. And definitely that doesn't mean that basically, let's say if somebody has $5 million wealth in assets and liquid assets and inventory and so forth, you have $5 debt. That doesn't make you. No, when we say in debt here, basically meaning if you pay your wealth, you're still going to be in the negative, or at least negative below the threshold of the zakah, at least. Okay. طيب. Last but not least, the fifth condition is murur al-hawl. Murur al-hawl is basically that money now. Now, these 4 conditions, with the amounts and so forth, if you have something that you own totally and has met the threshold of nisab and so forth, if those 4 conditions are there, they must be like that for a full year. You have to have that amount for a full year. After having it for a full year, you pay zakat on it. Okay? So if you have 40 sheep and you continue to own 40 sheep for 1 full year, lunar year, definitely lunar year, then after 1 year you become zakat liable. You owe zakat on these 40 sheep. But if you own 40 sheep only for 11 months, you don't pay zakat. If you sold all these sheep after 11 months, you don't pay zakat. You don't pay zakat on the lambs. Okay. طيب. I'm going to stop here basically for a 5-minute, inshallah, a question and answer session. So who wants to ask a question? Go ahead.
There was a question on OSAP that does this mean we have to pay zakat on OSAP?
Okay, well, zakat is debt. So how does it? I don't understand the question at all. We just said that basically one of the conditions of zakah is being debt free. Being debt free. And if you have OSAP, that means you have debt. So you don't pay zakah on debt. If you're in debt, that means you need money. You couldn't pay for your schooling, so you're a person who is, considered a little bit to the poorer side of the story. And that means basically you're taking debt so you can spend for your schooling. How would you pay zakah when you're in debt? So don't forget, let's make sure that we focus, inshallah ta'ala. It's if you have debt, you are not a person who, unless you have loss of wealth, which again doesn't explain what the debt is there for anyway. So anyway, the easy thing is subtract the debt that you have from your total wealth. And if that total wealth still basically is more than the nisab, which is a threshold amount for that specific wealth category, then you become zakah, liable. So that's one question. Let's take a second question, inshallah ta'ala.
Yes, Brother Sahel, you can go.
Sahil, go ahead, Ahi.
I just want to know, actually, I know someone who has bought mortgage and he has debt. So, and that guy is not paying zakat. So should he pay or not?
Well, the fuqaha have agreed that basically anything that's haram it does not basically make you, haram assets. It does not make you not zakah liable, right? So if somebody taking a debt through a haram means, some scholars or lots of scholars have said, well, it doesn't really matter. You still need to pay zakah on your portion. So that's what I would say. So, and I do hold the opinion that basically mortgages are haram, and therefore basically that would be the answer for such a case. But if you come and tell me, well, no, this brother basically has a halal mortgage, and he's in debt, then yes, that's fine. You understand? So let's say you went, actually forget the word mortgage. Let's say you go and you ask your dad for a debt, and your dad basically gives you $300,000 to buy a small apartment for 500. Let's say you have 200 yourself. So now you are in debt for $300,000 to your dad. Until you pay that $300,000, you are not zakah liable. Okay, unless you have so much wealth that for some reason maybe you're running a business and you have lots of assets and inventory that is actually way more than 300K, and it passes again. If you subtract the debt, it still passes the threshold. Then you're still liable for the zakah. Okay, just for that portion. طيب, Allah barak fikum. We said we're going to take only 2 questions, so the other brothers, inshallah, sisters will take your questions after. Write them down, put them in the Q&A section. Let's take, inshallah, a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back to continue the lecture, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. Guess we're back, inshallah. So we covered basically the conditions of the person who zakah is fard upon, and when does the zakah become really fard upon the wealth that the person has. Okay. Now let's discuss really what types of wealth does zakah becomes applicable, right? Number one is basically an-nuqud, which is really money. But money in Islam basically is always measured in gold and silver. Gold and silver. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran in many places basically speaks about the gold and silver and what is the amount that is wajib. As we said in the gold, we didn't specify the gold. Maybe we spoke about the silver. The gold, every gold dinar is 4.25 grams. The number that you own, which becomes zakatable, is 20 dirhams. So 20 times 4 is how much? 80. And 20 times 0.25 is how much? 5. So 85 grams. If you own 85 grams of gold, pure gold, then you are liable for paying zakah. Definitely anything above that is the same thing. From a perspective of dirhams, which is a silver coin, we said it's 200 dirhams, which is equivalent to 585 grams of pure silver. Yeah? طيب. Now, what does it mean to basically the year, يحول الحول, which is basically you need to have the money. Let's say you have 20 gold dinars. You have to have 20 gold dinars for 1 full year. After 1 full year, of storage or savings of this gold wealth, then the zakah starts accumulating, right? So every year, basically, you need to pay 2.5%. Okay. So from the 20 gold dinars, for every 20 gold dinars, the zakah on those gold is half a dinar. Half a dinar. And that means basically for every 100 gold dinars, you pay 2.5 dinars. Okay, which is 2.5%. It's 2.5% of any gold amount that is over the 85 grams. Okay. طيب. What about basically fiat currency, paper money? What happens with paper money? Most people basically don't own gold and silver these days. Some do, but most don't. Most people have their wealth in cash, Canadian dollar in this case, here in Canada, or maybe US dollars because it's a world currency. So people have US dollars even in any countries. So how do we calculate the zakah? Well, there's a big difference in opinion amongst the scholars. How do we basically set a standard for something that didn't exist back then, right? And what you need to understand is that the proper store of value that you use as a money tool in Islamic economics is gold and silver strictly. Yeah, these are the main currency for Islam is gold being number 1 and silver being number 2. So those two things are the main currencies. Nickel and other type of non-precious metals can be used for smaller pieces of coins, but that's really it. Yeah, it's not the major unit of exchange of value. What you need to understand is that gold and silver have intrinsic value. They have value within themselves, within itself. And that means the economy will be stable. There is no fluctuation depending on the prices of speculation within the trade. Gold is gold. Gold is gold, and within a specific economy, if the country has the right monetary policy, you can keep the economy to be stable. The gold amounts of gold and basically is extent you. I mean, we discover gold and silver as we go, but it's small amounts that doesn't basically change or create fluctuations within any economy right now, or especially within the world economy. And definitely, I'm not speaking about basically, the economy being so weak that the gold and silver flies out of the economy. And that's why I said from the beginning, the assumption is you have an economy that has a strong monetary policy that safeguards the gold and silver, so it doesn't fly out of that Islamic economy, and you're gonna have stability. You're gonna have stability in prices. Right now, most currencies, even though relatively they're stable, but as you can see, the dollar goes up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Just this year in Canada, the dollar maybe at the beginning of the year used to be converted maybe at 1.4 or something. Right now it is 1.24 or 23 or 25, whatever it is. So there's fluctuation. That 15% affects trade. I mean, people who make budgets and forecast their budgets for a year or two, or forget it, just like 6 months or 1 year, they don't know how much to basically keep in money because of the fluctuation of the even the currency the strongest in the world, which is the dollar. That's the strongest currency in the whole world, that's why it's the world reserve currency. Really, it is the strongest, most trusted currency in the globe today. It still fluctuates up and down, which creates a problem in financing and operating a business. So in Islam, no, gold and silver basically are stable. For this fraction of gold, basically you can buy a loaf of bread. For this fraction of gold, you can basically buy whatever it is, and which helps the economy to be basically more entrepreneurial and more active. So that's one. Yeah. Number two is, now what do we do with it? Like, how do we calculate it? And there's, as I said, there's ikhtilaf. Some people basically said, well, let's measure gold and silver and let's take what's the lower one. So let's say, maybe we can look up the prices for gold and silver now, so we can quickly see. If you want, I can do it right now. I haven't looked it up for a bit. As you can see, I'm not a gold and silver owner, which says it all. So let's start with gold prices. So Google gives you the gold prices right now. They give it per gram, per ounce, per everything. So right now, April 4th, 15th hour New York time, the gram of gold is $55.64. $55.64. So what do? We pick up a calculator, and then we basically put 55.64 cents per gram times 85 grams, which is the nisab of zakat gold. So I have 4,729.4 US dollars. If we're going to convert it to Canadian, we take that money, we take that number, copy results from the calculator, you go to Google, you open another browser, you put basically this, and you put in Canadian dollars, right? USD in Canadian, and Google will do the transformation for you, and it just told me that 4,729.4 US dollars, which is the 85 grams of gold, is equivalent to $5,947.93 Canadian cents, which is so to we round it off to basically so $6,000 Canadian. So if you have $6,000 Canadian for one full year, then you become a zakat liable person from a cash perspective. Let's do the same thing with the silver and see what's the difference between them, because we want to discuss this little difference. So gold prices, let's do silver prices. So Google tells us that basically the silver price per gram is 80 cents. So go back to our calculator. Go back to our calculator, and we basically put 0.8 cents. And how many grams? Do you guys remember how many grams? It's 585 grams. And that puts it at 468 US dollars. It's very small. If we go back to the conversion, and we put basically 600, sorry, how much was it? 468, $468, $468. And the number is 588.58 cents. So around $600 Canadian. So if you calculate using basically silver, it's $600. And if you calculate through gold, it's 10 times as much. 10 times as much. Yeah? So which one do we basically base our zakah upon? So the first opinion is you measure both and you take the lower one. Yeah? And in this case, it's basically the $600. But to be honest, like, if somebody has $600 in their bank account, that's all they have. Like, do you consider them poor? Or do you consider them rich? Yeah, so we're going to answer this question. So the second type of opinion says, no, let's take silver. Let's take silver. Why? Because silver is usually basically cheaper, and therefore basically more money can be given. Kind of similar type of overall. It's just specifying. So I would say those two things kind of have the same mindset from a fiqh perspective. At least the first one has a stronger dalil from the Quran and Sunnah. The second one is like, being a little bit, giving more preferential treatment, which I don't believe there's a basis for. But anyway, the third opinion is to use gold. Why? Not because there's less taxes on the rich. That's not the case. You'd only hear such statements from Western politicians. But those have a very strong argument too, saying basically actually the gold standard mimics more closely the world economy, and it's actually in more closer state to a real demand on gold. Right? Right now, the prices of gold, people, imagine a world that uses silver and gold in its as its sole currency. What does that mean? That means basically you need to buy and sell all the GDP, world GDP of goods and services in the gold and silver. Let's just split it into two. Let's say the world GDP, which is all the produced goods and services in a specific economy, is there. So let's take a look. Let's go do a quick calculation. Let's go back to Mr. Google and say, let's open a third tab and say world GDP. How much is that? Let's see. So it gave me, oh my gosh, a humongous number. I can't even remember. 1, 2 billion, trillion, 80 trillion. The world GDP is 80 trillion US dollars. Yeah. So, how many grams of gold do we have worldwide? How much gold? We'll make another Google tab. How much gold do we have on Earth? How much gold in the world? So Mr. Google tells me around 244,000 metric tons of gold has been discovered to date. Yeah. 244,000 metric tons. So let's take that and also let Mr. Google help us in his third, fourth, fifth tab, 2 grams. Let's convert it to 2 grams. And the number is huge, yeah? Metric tons is just, it's let's take this and see what we're going to do with it. And let's now basically divide the 80 trillion, split the 80 trillion into 2 halves, one for gold and one for silver. And let's just divide what we produced in gold in goods and services just this last year in the world and see what would the price of gold be, because you want to correlate what's been produced of goods and services this year to the money that you have, which is a good calculation. I'm not saying this is the right calculation, just a quick, caution here. But we just want to see, is the difference big, or is basically every gram of gold is going to be closer to a $6,000 Canadian or $5,000 American? Which one is it? So let's put this 24. Let's divide the 80 trillion with this 2.44 times 10 to the 11 grams using our calculator. Let's see if we can use the calculator to do this. So 244 tons. 244 tons. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, 244 metric tons of gold, and let's divide that by the $80 trillion. 80 trillion. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's a million. 1, 2, 3. That's a billion. 1, 2, 3. That's a trillion. How much is it? It's 327. 327. Sorry, let's divide by 2 because we did take 40 trillion, and multiply that by 85. So what I got right now, so I divided 40 trillion by 244 metric tons of gold, so I can get how much the equivalent gram of gold should be today. Right? So this calculator is telling me right now that it's 14,000 US dollars. If I do a quick calculation to basically get the, it's $17,500 Canadian. So it's closer to $20,000, as you can see. Instead of $20,000. Instead of $20,000. And that's just basically splitting gold and silver, which is not the right thing to do. We should make it like 3/4 gold and 1/4 silver, because silver is way more cheaper. And if we do that, we can multiply it times 1.5. It'll basically be $26,000 Canadian. So compare $6,000 Canadian, $26,000. I think if a person has $26,000 Canadian extra in their bank account, I think they're not bad. I think after basic spending and buying everything you need to buy and so forth, and having that $26,000 sit there for 1 full year, because you don't need it. You've already basically spent everything that you need in your life, whether it's your rent, whether it's your maintenance for your house, or your cars, your gas, your food, your vacation times, your trips, whatever it is. After spending everything, you still have $26,000 in your bank account. I think it's a little bit more realistic. Yeah. But unfortunately, right now, I personally would be a proponent to such an idea from a fiqh perspective. And the reason is because this is giving us a better view of what gold should have been, right? Because right now, gold is not used. Therefore, the demand for gold is way less. Imagine everybody now needs gold because they need to pay for goods and services. If you don't have gold, you can't buy milk. You know what I'm saying? You could be the wealthiest person in the world and have lots of houses and cars. But what are you going to go to the store with? You're going to say, hey, can you take my car and give me some milk? It just doesn't work like that. So the demand for gold will basically kind of skyrocket. People would need gold, as you can see. The difference is humongous. So it's $26,000 Canadian to $6,000 Canadian. Which one is the better number? As I said, I believe that 26 is a better number, but I'm not giving a fatwa here. I'm just giving you a quick mathematical exercise just to make you understand why does Islam, believe, or why does Islam basically set the gold as the standard for currencies in the monetary system within an Islamic economic system. Okay. Now, if I do that same exercise with silver, it's going to be even worse because silver is way cheaper right now. As you can see, the gram is like $0.8 80 cents for a gram of silver. Why? Well, gold is still in demand because it's gold. Everybody wants gold. Still, people want gold and jewelry and this and that. Who cares about silver? Silver became a second-class citizen from within the precious metal perspective. So I'll leave it here. and inshallah continue now, go back with the course. But I hope I gave you a little better perspective of how. Right now, basically, the best opinion you can follow is basically using gold as a standard. I don't believe basically using silver. It's actually like it's just contradictory. Anybody who have $600 in their pocket, these people, if you know what I'm saying, if they go into an accident, they might not be able to pay it. If they need, let's say, if their car broke down, forget an accident. If their car broke down and needs 4 tires, that $600 might not even be enough. So anybody who has $600 as a surplus in their bank account, they're people who basically deserve zakat. It's not the other way around. Right now, we're going to go with a $6,000 Canadian number and use that for our calculations for zakah, inshallah, this year. Or again, you can basically do the same calculation if you want the exact numbers. If you want to be very precise in what you're doing, and then you can basically go to Google and do exactly the same exercise I did. You figure out what's the spot market of gold in terms of prices per gram, and you make sure basically you have the right also conversion from the US dollar to Canadian on the currency market, and you do those conversions. For the gold is 85 grams of pure gold. Okay. Any questions about that?
Yeah, Sheikh, there is a question.
Okay, let's go.
Yes, it's my brother Ashraf Iqbal, and he typed it in the Q&A. He's asking if a person has a combination of different types of wealth over which an year has passed, although each component is less than the nisab, what is his liability? Say he owns 4 camels, 30 sheep, and gold that does not reach the gold nisab, but all combined is valued at more than the threshold.
Yeah, we didn't get to this, but it's fine. So if you have gold, if you have silver, if you have sheep, let's say you have 4 camels and 30 sheep and 18 gold dinars and 150 silver dinars, silver dirhams, then you're not zakat payable. Every wealth pays zakat separately from that perspective. We don't go do conversions. So that's at least the opinion I follow in this case, inshallah ta'ala.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, inshallah?
Yes, Sister Sophia, you can talk.
Assalamu alaikum. I was wondering if in case you had, let's say about 10K invested into a business and you still haven't received the profit on it, but you expect if there is a profit or loss, you don't really know. And let's say during Ramadan, you're still waiting to find out. So you're on the wait period to know what is going to happen with the 10K, but that is the principle. So is that amount zakatable?
I want you to tell me, I'm going to test you on this. Does it meet the requirements for zakat?
Okay, so it does meet the full, so you do have full ownership on an asset in this case, but at the same time, you mentioned about wealth that you own that is investable, then there is zakat on it, but it's just that you don't know the total. So, and then there's also the part where you mentioned you should have at least had it for a year. So that's what confuses me. Like, I don't know.
That's it. So you got it. You're
Okay.
right, and you get full marks for that. You need to always remember that the money that you pay zakat upon must have been with you for 1 full year. Okay? So if you still don't even own it, you don't need to worry about it because it might come, might not come. So what was the first condition? Total ownership. There's 3 types of ownership. There's total ownership, which is zakatable. There's partial ownership, which are like RSPs, we don't pay zakat upon. And there's actually no lack of ownership. You don't have ownership. Right now, you don't have ownership. It's a possible future ownership. So you don't even own it. So don't even basically think about zakat until the money comes in. After the money comes in, when you go to your diary or you go to your financial software and say, I received $10,000 on April 25th and in 2021, and that means 11 days between April 25th, 2022. And the reason I'm saying 11 days is because the difference between a lunar year and a solar year, if I'm not mistaken, is around 11 days. So you subtract those 11 days and you say by April, say, 14th, 2022, that's when the zakat becomes obligatory on those $10,000. Now, if you spend them before that date, then you don't need to pay zakat for them either. So the money has to be with you for one full year. If you have a money that stays with you for a year and you don't use it, then that's when it becomes like, see, the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like as you can see, that's really, really, a person must be really rich to have that much money for a full year, and it's untouchable. The person must have so much money that like he doesn't have a chance to actually get to this portion and pay zakat. See what I'm saying? So definitely there's no zakat on money that you might acquire in the future. There's no zakat on that. In the contrary, even if you receive it, you still need to wait one full year until it becomes zakat liable.
Jazakum Allahu khair.
May Allah bless you. طيب. And subhanAllah, the next section I wanted to cover today, right now, is basically the bonuses that you expect at the end of the year or whatever. So I just answered it, which is perfect. We'll skip to something also that's lady specific. For all the ladies in the class who have gold and silver jewelry, what do we do with that? Now, do we pay zakat on the gold and silver or not? The madhahib have differed on this one, yeah. But there's a minority and there's a majority. The minority opinion of the madhahib, specifically one madhab, which is the Hanafi madhab. And that's why many brothers and sisters from the subcontinent, because they're Hanafis, they believe they should pay zakat on that jewelry. And that is the minority opinion within the fiqh. And it's the opinion that I believe is not corresponding to the conditions we just mentioned, because these are they're not used for a nama. Remember when I said the nama, the growth. You're not basically buying this jewelry to grow this money into more money. No, you're buying it as an object to basically use it for decoration and for zina, right? For wearing it, right? Really. So if the intention is to just basically buy jewelry to wear it, then there is no zakat according to all the other madhahib, which is the majority of the scholars within the ummah, which is the Hanafi, which is the Shafi'i, the Hanbali, and the Maliki madhab. And definitely from a perspective of the strength of the evidences that I basically see. Again, people could see things differently. That's why there's ikhtilaf in the first place. So is there zakat on jewelry? No. If you are now a jewelry store and you're buying jewelry, even if you're a woman, yeah, I'm not going to believe that you're going to wear all the jewelry in the store. So it becomes an intention. If these jewelry are basically for sale, then this jewelry becomes zakatable, and the same amounts apply for gold and silver, which is 85 grams and 585 grams. Okay. Last but not least, brothers, is basically the zakat of business. We have a business tax in Islam, zakatu al-mal, zakatu mal al-urud. Al-urud is the plural for ard, which is basically an offer, things that you offer for sale. What we call in English inventory, okay, or goods to be sold, really. Yeah, the goods or services are sold. Let's really goods. So goods to be sold are goods that you need to have the value of, and take the 2.5% of that in zakah. So let's say you are a person that sells, I don't know, let's say you sell cars, okay? And you've bought, say 40 cars at the beginning of the year. And you bought those cars, and we're going to always basically try to mimic market value in US dollars or Canadian dollars. So let's say you buy 40 cars for, let's say, $300,000 or $500,000, yeah. And then basically you sold the cars and you bought cars and you sold cars and you bought cars, and by the end of the lunar year, you were left with 20 cars for $300,000. Yeah. That $300,000 worth of cars is zakatable, because over the $6,000 that we said you have, and you pay 2.5% of these cars as which is $300,000. We're speaking of $7,500 zakat on the cars. Okay, so after 1 full years of trading, you pay 2.5% of this inventory, and and that goes to the poor people of the world. Anything else? Basically, we'll take a question now. We've covered jewelry, we've covered inventory. Yeah, let's take a question or two, maybe.
Yes, Sister Salma, you can go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Okay, so I'm still confused with the whole jewelry thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so basically is what if you have, like, for example, you know how in most cultures, like when a girl gets married, she receives a lot of gold as gifts and right? So those jewelry, especially nowadays, a lot of people don't wear. So I have jewelry that I'm not using. They're just like they're just laying around wherever. So since I'm not technically using them as ornaments or decorations, but they are in jewelry format, would that still not count as zakat payable?
No, if even if you're not using them, but you bought them for a personal, like for example, let's say you have a car, but you're not using it. It's just sitting there it's sat there for a full year. You didn't use it. It does not become the car with non-usage does not become a zakat asset. Okay, it still stays as a non-zakat asset, because the intention of why you bought it is for personal usage. Like even within the tax system in this country, basically, certain things basically ask you: is this for when you buy a car, for example? Is this car, you buying this car for business purpose or for personal purpose, right? So similarly, basically, the Zakah Revenue Agency, the ZRA, is going to ask you. You've got all these jewelry. Sorry, I don't see your name. So you bought all these jewelry. Let's say basically, I don't know, 10 necklaces and 20 bracelets and whatever it is. And you tell them this is for personal use. This is for personal use. I'm buying this for personal use. I'm not putting them anywhere to sell. They're not on Kijiji. They're not on Facebook Market. I don't have an online store for jewelry. I don't have a physical store for jewelry. These are really for personal use. That even if you just stored them and did nothing with them, that's fine. See what I'm saying? Did that answer your question, or did I misunderstand your question?
No, you answered it, but I'm still just like, because since I do belong to the Hanafi madhab, like ever since I was young, I was told that you're supposed to pay zakat on the jewelry that you have. So this is like really confusing me.
Well, they're not. What's the confusion? So the madhab differ. One madhab says you have to pay. One madhab says you don't have to pay.
So basically, since I would pay then, correct?
Well, it's not like that. It's basically what you believe is true. Let me tell you something about the madhab very quickly, because I don't want to go outside the zakah subject. The ulama of the past from all the four madhab, so not just Hanafi, we're saying all the four madhab, say basically الناس أو العامة على مذهب إمامهم, meaning the public, the laymen, are upon the madhab of their sheikh in the masjid and so on. You know what I'm saying? When a person says I'm upon a madhab of such and such, that means that person has spent a few years, I'm not saying 20 years, just maybe like a couple of years to study the madhab, the rules of the madhab. So he becomes a student of knowledge of that madhab and knows the ahkam of the madhab. It's not you're not born with the madhab in Islam, right? So that's the thing. But when I said basically people from the subcontinent, because most of the mashayikh in the subcontinent, most of the imams are actually Hanafi. Mm-hmm. So I personally, after looking into the evidences without like a madhab bias from my perspective of this issue, I do not believe, and my teachers don't believe, that the jewelry for women must be zakatable. Why are we taxing our sisters for buying something which is part of their life, right? Like if I buy a watch as a man, I don't pay zakat on the watch. Well, why is it basically when my sister buys little earrings, even cheaper than the watch, I could buy a platinum watch for like $10,000 or $20,000, $40,000, and I still don't pay zakat on that platinum watch. When my sister buys like $100 worth of earrings just because they're silver, now she has to basically, take the brunt or bear the brunt of paying zakat money on it. It's just something's not making sense here, because we already have said that one of the characteristics of zakah is that the money must be utilized for growing it, or at least the possibility of growing it. It being gold and silver coincides with the monetary unit in the economy, because the Islamic monetary system is based upon gold and silver, and therefore the discrepancy, and therefore the difference of ijtihad within the madhab. Now we respect fully the opinion of the Hanafi madhab, like we would have respected it even if it's any madhab, it doesn't really matter. So it's definitely an opinion. If the opinion is there within the form of madhab, it definitely deserves respect from everybody without any exception. But now when I'm teaching, I'm teaching the opinion that I see, stronger, and I believe the jumhur, meaning the majority of the madhab, which is other three madhabs, have stronger evidences in this case, and therefore I don't believe jewelry, even if it's many, even if it's like you have gold in the kilos, you do not pay any zakah for jewelry. Allah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jazakallah.
وإياكم أختي إن شاء الله. We'll take another question, and it will be 6 o'clock if I'm not mistaken. We'll stop for today, and we will continue. Maybe inshallah, if there's demand, and mashallah, we have lots of people in the room. If there is demand, we can have another session, maybe throughout Ramadan, to do Zakah, the Fiqh of Zakah part 2. I'll go in a little bit more details. Maybe there's one more thing I want to discuss before we finish, but we'll take one more question, inshallah.
Hey, Sister Anisa, you can go ahead. Oops.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
My question is, like, if I just pay 2.5% of my bank balance because I know it's more than the zakat, like, is that enough of an intention, or should I actually be calculating it?
No, that's really it. I mean, most people just have cash in their bank accounts. There's not much really in that, really. But you just need to calculate it on the day of the nisab. So if you pay zakah on the 13th day of every Ramadan, every 13th Ramadan, you log into your bank account or through your mobile app or your web browser, and you see how much do I have. I have, let's say, $23,000 and $251.61. You take that number, you record it. You take a screenshot, you record it with a date, and that becomes basically the number that you're going to calculate, 2.5%, which becomes the liable amount for you to pay as soon as possible.
Okay. Jazakallah khairan.
Inshallah. We will take one more question, maybe, inshallah.
Okay, so Brother Abdullah Azim, you can go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Quick question with for example, the bank account. So if your bank account, let's say, is whatever, 10,000, 20,000, goes up 30, 40, then goes back down to 5,000 in the middle of the year, then goes back up to 10 by the time you have to pay your zakat. Is it the 5,000 that is like over the whole year? You pick the lowest of what you had that was kind of your inventory throughout the year, or is it like whatever you ended up with?
A very, very good question. So actually, I'm not going to discuss anything else. Leave everything else for next time. And I'm going to basically use my pen right here to explain it on the board. You guys can see the board now? Yeah, you guys can see the board?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Okay, perfect. So this is a full year, right? So this, go. I don't like the red. So this is a year, right? So this is this is how much money you have. This is the money, and this is time. This is 1 year. There we go. 6, 12, 18, 24. And this is in thousands of dollars Canadian, right? So let's say you start the year with $12,000. And this money keeps growing, growing, and then goes like that. So at this point, it was $6,000. At this point, it's $23,000. At this point, it was $14,000. Yeah, you guys see? So, and let's basically kind of put the timelines. Yeah, so this is at the end of the year. This is, let's say, 6 months in. This is 3 months in. What happens, Akhi Abdul Azim, is that the minute you hit this number right here, this date, the calculation of the 1 lunar year to reach the hawl, which is the condition of the zakah, gets reset. The clock gets reset. So now your new, basically 1 year starts from here, not from the beginning of the year. See what I'm saying? Now, that being said, it becomes complicated to just monitor your account. Am I going down? Am I slipping under the nisab and so forth? Most people basically, they set a date, and every single day on that year, they just take 2.5%, knowing that they might be paying actually the optional sadaqah with its popular meaning, which is the voluntary charity, and not fully zakah, which is obligation, because they might have dipped in throughout the year below the nisab. And they're okay with it because the more sadaqah you give, the better. The more sadaqah you give, the better. See what I'm saying? And as we said in the beginning of the lecture, we said basically paying sadaqat is a sign of belief, of truthfulness about La ilaha illallah. And definitely the faridah is important, but the voluntary is even more, because that's basically, it's optional. You're going out of your way to scream that I believe in Allah. So so you can do this. But so you asked me about the fiqh term. The fiqh term, yes, the clock gets reset in the middle of the year. That means basically you have 6 more months for the zakat to become liable.
So if it was the month 6, instead of 6,000, it was actually 10,000, then would you pay zakat on 10,000 or on 14,000 or on 23,000?
Say one more time.
It was still up. So let's say instead of the 6,000, that 6 month you only go down to 10,000. You're still above the zakat limit. Then at the end of that year, do you pay zakat on the 14,000 or the 10,000 or the 23,000?
Okay, perfect. So this is another question. So same thing for this one. You can basically keep track now on every single dollar in, dollar out. And I believe basically, in a ZRA situation, we have Zakat Revenue Agency and more software that are Zakat focused, especially if they can integrate it into your bank account and so forth. You can now start calculating every single dollar that comes in and every single dollar that comes out, so you can understand the segments of this money. So mostly people basically, if you're an employee, you get, let's say, 12 or 24 checks a year. So this is the income. So every single check that comes in, you have a separate clock for it. You can do that. See what I'm saying? And the minute you basically sink in a little bit, well, you only take that portion to basically pay zakat for. Again, most people basically, to make it easier, they just look at their bank account after 1 year and they just take 2.5%, knowing again that they might be paying sadaqah and not only zakah, because that 2.5 of that number is larger than what they are required to pay from a zakat perspective.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. I have one other question. I'll ask it whether you answer or not. Maybe we can leave it for another time if that's okay.
Go ahead.
It was if you are lending somebody money, so let's say you lend somebody $10,000, do you pay zakat on the lent money?
A beautiful question, because that was the section I was going to exactly cover. SubhanAllah. Zakat al-duyun. No, I believe personally that remember basically what's the first condition of paying zakat? You must own the money fully. When you give a loan to somebody else, your own money now is in somebody else's hands. They have temporary ownership of your money. Yeah, it's full ownership from their perspective. They can use it. They can buy whatever they want with it. They can do whatever they want to do. They can do whatever they want with it. So from their perspective, now they don't pay zakat on debt because it's debt. So the person in debt doesn't have to pay zakat, which is another rule of zakat. But definitely you don't have the money in your pocket, so you don't pay zakat on money that is given in debt. Definitely it's also a fiqh issue that has differences in opinion amongst the scholars, but I am fully against basically people like I am basically with the jewelry. People who don't have, you don't have the money. Why are you paying zakat on money that you don't have? Especially if you're doing qard hasan, because riba is haram. So we're assuming if you're giving it as riba, yes, zakat is on it and more than on it. But if it's the qard hasan, well, we already basically Rasulullah told us that the qard hasan is equivalent to half giving the sadaqah. So it's 50%. Let's say you gave $100,000. The equivalent is basically as if you're giving out $50,000 from your pocket. And now basically some scholars come and tell me, oh, you still need to pay the 2.5. I'm like, I already gave the equivalent of half of my money because I'm doing it as qard hasan. So now you're coming and asking me for another 2.5%. It's just not adding up from a fiqhi perspective. So zakat al-duyun was the next section I was gonna go through. We're gonna start with it basically next time, inshallah, Biithnillāh ta'ala. But the short answer for that is that if you are a lender, right, not a borrower, if you're a lender, also that money that you've lent out, you don't pay zakat on because it's not even in your pocket anymore. You don't have access to it. That person might as well basically, he might spend it, lose it, burn it, and your money's gone. You might not even get it back in your life. So what do? We just basically keep it on our account. Let's say you give maybe your brother-in-law $1 million, and he just steals it. So what do you do? It's still the money is still in your name, meaning if the person does tawbah, he'll give it to you back. Do you still keep it in your papers and you still pay zakat on something that was stolen? Nothing is making sense in this mas'ala, in this issue from fiqh perspective, when we require the lender to pay more zakat on money that first you've done great good by giving it as qard hasan. Secondly, he doesn't have the money in the first place. The money is not under his ownership anymore from a full ownership perspective. So definitely my answer is decisive, no. You don't pay zakat on lend out money. Now let's flip it. If you have debt, and you kind of alluded to it before, the debt that you have must be subtracted from your wealth before you pay money, before you pay zakat. If you have, and some people basically might have, loss of money and they're still getting debt somehow for some reason. If they exceed the $6,000, they pay money on that number. So they subtract the debt, see how much they have, and they pay debt on that. The third mas'ala, and probably I've finished this concept of zakat al-duyun anyway. The third mas'ala is very important. Some people tell me, look, some people get large amount of debt, So for example, when a person gets halal mortgage, I don't know if there's such a thing, but let's say halal mortgage, and they get money that they cannot pay out except for 30 years from now. So some scholars, recent modern scholars, say, well, you know what, that's not fair because they're not going to pay zakah for 30 years, and therefore we need to make an exception. And the reason we need to make an exception is because there are lots of poor people and we need to fill their bellies. This is so, there's nothing, it has nothing to do with Quran and Sunnah. It's pure rationalization of the ahkam, which is rejected. This is, first of all, this is an invalid way of thinking in the first place, for it to be even a valid fatwa.
Oh, so it looks like it's most likely an internet issue on their end. So he left the Zoom session. In the meantime, I guess I can make quick announcements, the announcements I was wanting to make. Yes, that is true, Abdulaziz, that's what I'm going to do. So let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, so you guys wanted to know the what do you call it? When will be the next Zakah, right? Part 2. So for that, do register for the power hours. We will have the next one on Tuesday. So you guys can see, right? Sheikh has 3. Sheikh has 3 what do you call? 3 sessions throughout the month. Throughout the week, that's what I mean. So next one will be on April 6th. Next one will be on April 6th. And that will be Sheikh is here.
Sorry guys, subhanAllah. I guess my internet got disconnected for some reason, but we're back here, mashallah, as quickly here, the last couple minutes. So I was saying basically that the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, what was I saying? Yeah, so having a large debt doesn't basically in any way or shape give us the right to set a zakah on poor people. If the person is already have a huge debt for 30 years, that means he's poor for 30 years. Like it's very wrong and unjust to actually put more pressure on people who have long-term debt. Period. See what I'm saying? So subhanAllah, at the end of the day, all we can do is basically subtract the debt from the current, from the person's wealth, and if the wealth is still underneath the $6,000 threshold, there's no zakah. So I don't believe in this basically wishy-washy stuff that people demand zakah. The second piece, which of their argument is that if we do that, less people will pay zakah, and then we're going to have less money to feed the poor. I'm going to tell them it's not the job of individuals to feed the poor. It's supposed to be the job of the government. The government is supposed to create resources to pay for the expenses of every single Muslim citizen in their jurisdiction. So let's not conflate 2 issues that have nothing to do with each other, inshallah. So that's really it for me, I guess, for today, inshallah. I can take maybe a couple more questions and we will end for today, inshallah.
Okay, so one more question, another question. That is by Brother Bandar. Brother Bandar, you can go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. I had a question about zakat ad-duyun. So say you have like a big debt, but it's like amortized over say 10 years. So you pay only like 10%, like a fixed amount of the debt, like say it's a $500,000 debt and you're paying $50,000 a year. Do you subtract your total wealth from the $50,000 and then pay zakat, or on the whole debt?
No, the whole debt.
Okay.
If you debt is debt. Are you liable for it or not liable for it? It's not about when you're going to pay the debt. The debt could be due in an amortized fashion every single month. Meaning, let's say you get like $100,000 debt, you're supposed to pay $1,000 every single month for the next 100 months, right? So it doesn't matter. You still owe all this debt. This is a debt upon you for the whole thing. So you subtract $100,000 from your wealth, and if you still have $6,000 more, then you pay zakah, inshallah, on the extra.
All right, Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Next up, Sister Salma, you can go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. I just have a question. If someone if they're married, should both the husband and the wife pay zakat, or is just the husband's responsibility? And what about if there's a single mother with kids? Is she supposed to pay zakat, or she doesn't have to? So I'm just confused with that.
So, every single person, as we said earlier in the halaqah or in the dars, whether you are an orphan, whether you're a child, whether you're a single mother, whether you are an insane person that doesn't have the ability to manage their own affairs, everybody, as long as they're Muslim and they have the money, and the money have reached the characteristics of a zakatable money, must pay zakah. Every single person. So the husband pays for his wealth and the wife pays for her wealth, right? Let's say basically the wife has $50,000 and the husband has $20,000. So the husband pays for the 20 and his 20 because he owns that 20, and the wife pays for her 50. Period. They have nothing to do with each other. Every Muslim, كل نفس بما كسبت رهينة. Every single soul is responsible for its own deeds, and that means its own wealth and its own property.
Okay, I got it. Thank you, Jazakallah khair.
I think with this we reached the ending of our session today. Apologies for basically disconnection of the internet. We also lost our camera here, but we had a quick emergency through our phone connection. We will see inshallah next week with Ta'ala on the Fiqh of Fasting. And if there's enough demand, please send us on Facebook and Telegram and WhatsApp and IG and everywhere. Basically, if you're interested in having a second Fiqh of Zakah course, inshallah ta'ala, or lecture, we will be very happy to conduct those, inshallah, sometime in Ramadan, so we can give you better understanding of the zakah, of the fiqh of the zakah, and the ahkam of the zakah, and the Islamic rulings of the zakah. Okay, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu bless everybody and make us from those who are pious and always applying the rules of Islam in our lives and society at large. وصلى الله على رسول الكريم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله